called the generatorless data center. And the concept was that I believed from a bunch of predictions that the data center market is in the beginnings of a paradigm shift from where it was to where it is going. And I thought that last year that there was a bunch of trends that were at play. And one of them was that we were going to start to look for alternative energy sources to power data centers. And I still believe that. And so that's what this presentation, I'm going to show you how Intuva, which is the division of PTS Data Center Solutions, to which I founded 27 years ago, that's the design, build, provider of data center facilities for the federal government, commercial, enterprise, and data center operators, along with my own operating data center company, Gray Wolf Data Centers, that is in the process of being developed right now. And we are redefining the way power and cooling and resilience in a post-electric grid environment. And that's what this presentation is about. Next. So, first act, the AI shockwave. AI caught the data center industry completely off guard, which is amazing to me, right? Because the data center industry prides itself on being at the forefront of what's going on. But think about it. 3 years ago, we weren't even talking about the world ChatGPT. And now it's endemic to everything that we do. It has the fastest correlation or fastest use case of anything in the history of mankind, of an adoption of a technology. And if AI was a clock, a 24-hour clock, we're only at about 2 a.m. in the morning. We have 22 hours left to go in the evolution of AI. And at the end of noon, halfway through the clock, we are not going to recognize the world. It is going to change everything in the way we work, the way we live. And right now, AI demand is far outpacing the infrastructure that we have. And data centers, the existing data centers, many of which in this country are 20 years or older at this point because of the evolution of data centers, are being overwhelmed. And we're shifting what the main workload is going to be. The main workload for AI right now is large language models. Large language models is a training model, teaching the model how to take a whole bunch of data and come up with answers. The questions are called inferencing. And inferencing is going to change the narrative because as more people use large language models, not on public data, but on private data, they're going to be asking data in a local way. And that is going to change the landscape of data centers. Next. So in 24, I made a whole bunch. I'm not going to read them, but I basically said that there was a couple things on play. One, we're running out of power. Two, things are starting to shift to the edge and other things. The future of the data center industry is at hand. Next. So we had an explosion of AI in 2024. So from the power standpoint, $700 million investment in small modular reactors. I'm going to speak to small modular reactors for just briefly, but this one is in X-Energy. And so X-Energy is a Gen 4 reactor. And I would argue that a Gen 4 reactor, which is a liquid metal reactor, is the future of power. However, let's remember that nuclear is nuclear. It's going to take a long time. I would argue that the technology is not actually done. This $700 million reactor is being built, but it's being built to test the technology, and that's going to take years. And that's not even the years before it is actually going to be accepted by the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And so that's going to take a few years on top of that. And yes, all of this is arguable, but I would argue that it's a Gen 4 reactor. Before it's commercially viable in the United States, we're talking at least 2035. Bill Gates is also included in this. And, it's funny, he had inside Bill's brain years ago, and it took forever for us to get on board for doing this. But here we are. It took AI to push the narrative to how fast are we going to be able to build a country. The energy shift is already in motion. Next. All right, so here's another one. Here's a coal-fired plant in Pennsylvania that's being repurposed as a $10 billion natural gas facility that is going to be done in the Homer City Generating Station, about 50 miles east of Pittsburgh. Next. Just gander at this. All of this just happened in 2024. Let it sink in the narrative of how fast the world is changing right now. I'm not going to read all of these, but I want to pause to look at some of the things. I'll just highlight two of them. How about in no time in history would we have been able to get through a pandemic if we weren't able to model the AlphaFold, if we weren't able to model proteins, right? Politics aside, what we did in the era of COVID was downright amazing. We isolated the protein in a week, and we engineered a perfectly fitting protein in a month. And then it took a year to build. All right, that's amazing to me. And we're seeing NVIDIA right now in an exponential mode producing the amount of flops. And we're going to have a lot of discussion about that. But never before in history, mankind has this level of innovation happened this fast in a technology's adoption rate. Next, please. All right, my girls. Yep, 57 years old. And despite the old age and the lack of hair, this is my family. I've got a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And that means I'm going to be working until I'm 118 years old. So get used to seeing me up here because I'm going to be doing it every year. But they are going to live in a different world than you grew up in, right? They are going to live in a world that the average age is 115. They will never need to drive a car. They will never go to doctor and solely go to a doctor to be diagnosed and or treated. They will learn and accumulate education far different way than you ever did. They will live in a world where gross domestic product for the first time in mankind is not led by human labor, but led by robotics and automation. They will live in a society that most people have to live on a universal basic income because there will not be a job. They will live in a world that AI will do everything you can do, but do it better. And we're going to have to get used to that because we are no longer going to become the smartest people on this planet. Next. So I got to meet Eric Schmidt and Elon Musk at the Abundance 360 meeting 2 years ago. And they asked everybody on the dais that day, how far ahead do you think? Now, look, I grew up in the world of EOS, right? Traction, Gino Wickman, right? And we built 10-year plans, built 5-year plans, built 3-year plans, built 1-year plan. But I asked these two gentlemen, how far in advance do you plan? You know what their answer was? Right there, 2 years. 2 years. Elon Musk said 3 years is a wild-ass guess. He goes, because we're living in an exponential world. But here's the thing about exponential, right? We see what exponential looks like this, right? But here, what does this look like? This looks linear, right? Because exponential in the beginning looks fairly flat. But you know where we are? We're right here. And you know what goes from here? That. Skyrocketing. You can't predict what's going to happen next. So planning is becoming really difficult. I would argue that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, my girls, and the youngest guys in my organization are going to do more for innovation on this planet than every subsequent generation has ever done times 4. Think back. Just go back. It took 1,000 years for language to be proliferated through the planet, right? It took 100 years for the written word and language. And then we get into the pre-1945 generations. And what was the great technology for them? Water in the home, electricity in the home. And that was revolutionary. And then let's get to my parents, the baby boomers. What was for them? Television, mass communication. Then let's move forward. It took 100 years for Kodak to become a company that owned the photography industry. But little did they realize their business wasn't photography. Their business was storing memories. And the moment the cell phone came around, which was sold off very quickly because it was going to impact them, they sold it off. And today they were put out of business. TikTok became $1 billion. It took Kodak 100 years to become $1 billion valuation. It took 2 years. And we will watch companies go to $1 billion valuation and back down to zero intergenerationally, and that has never happened before. Next, please. So there is $1 billion being spent on AI per day. Let that sink in. $1 billion a day right now is being sunk. Personal computers through the 70s and 80s, the internet, look at those adoption rates. Look at what generative AI is doing. Tell me that is not going to impact the world faster than ever before. So remember, we're here to think of, this is the shockwave portion of this. What is this going to do to the data center industry? Next, please. So here's what the data center industry looks like. There's 9,402 data centers, courtesy of Data Center Map. So look, the accuracy of that, I don't know how accurate it is, but that's an awful lot of data centers. I love the way they did it. Next slide, we're going to see that in the United States alone, the far by biggest leader, there's 3,622 data centers, right? And you can see that they are what I refer to the data center industry as highly centralized, right? In the American pro football cities, New York, Dallas, Los Angeles, Chicago, right? Because that's where the hyperscale cloud guys are. And then I would argue that the next bastion of data centers, the data center operators, they're going into the Division I cities, right? The NCAA cities, right? And so they are in the cities where there's people, process, and technology. And it is my argument that inferencing is going to push this to the edge. And that edge environment is going to be for performance and for proliferation of an AI-enabled device to federate at a local of where you're asking the question of the data. Next. So the answer was, how many more data centers is it going to take? And last year I put up a slide. I didn't put it up this year. My answer was a shitload. And that's a lot, right? And people ask me, what type? And the answer is all types. It's like a circus tent. When the circus tent goes up, all parts of the tent go up. The tent pole goes up. There's your hyperscale clouders. The field of the tent goes up. There's your data center operators. But the edge is going to go up, and the edge is going to rise again. And all parts of it are going to go up. So the shift is on. We see the cloud providers actually expanding into inferencing and building out edge. We see enterprise shifting and looking at how can they leverage a private small language model data. And the data center operators are going to be the regional data center operators. And by the way, what is it going to look like? Another technology back in the 90s that actually proliferated. It's going to look like telecommunications. Telecommunications reached down into the edge. There was a pop in every single town, and that's exactly what the data center is going to look like, except that data center is now going to be a 1 to 10 megawatt data center in every town in America. What I like to refer to as the high school football cities of America. Sorry, I coached football for 20 years. Everything has a football connotation. And so next, please. So there's case studies of people who are already building out. We see Tesla, right? Tesla's at the edge. Remember the model. Tesla first had a ton of different sensors in the car. And how many people have ever driven in the full service drive vehicle of a Tesla? It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You could get in that car, in your phone, tell you where you want to go. It'll pull you out of your drive you where you want to go, and park you in a parking spot of where you want to go. And they did that by shifting from tons of sensors to nothing but cameras and shifting it to an AI engine that learns what you did well when you took over the control from automatic, from manual from automatic. And then they learned and trained and learned and trained and built it. And it's a self-evolving model that's getting better all the time. And that's a perfect use case of edge. You see AWS with Greengrass and Coral Edge doing the same thing, and Metalllama, who is actually one of the foundational LLMs that everybody else is distilling. When you're building the new DeepSeek model, basically the first thing you do is you train it on an old model. So you go to Llama and you train it on everything Llama ever learned. Then you go to OpenAI and you learn everything on there. Then you go to OpenStack and ChatGPT and you learn everything there. And then you add your secret sauce. So large language models are going to get cheaper and faster and cheaper and faster, which is going to make them inferencing all the faster. Next, please. So Act 2, the coming crisis. What does all this mean? What does it mean that all this AI is going to be so demanding on data centers and power and latency and performance? Well, latency is one of them. The network costs, the energy and cooling. I'd argue that there's not enough energy in the central cities anymore, and we're too far away for nuclear to be effective right now. We're too far away for quantum computing to be effective right now. We're too far away for hydrogen to be proliferated to do it right now. So, but technology's not going to wait. What are we going to do? What is going to be the answer? Next, please. So let's take a look at this. This is the training versus inferencing. And this is projected only 1 year, but look at in AI inferencing, look at the crossover already that it's taken from training. And by the way, where's the trend of both of these? Still massively going up. They're not actually slowing down. And I can tell you that we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. All of the large language models that are available to you are trained on what? public information. And we're seeing big fights on copyright infringement, and make no bones about it, right? I'm a book writer. They took my book immediately upon it being published, and it's actually out on the large language model. There's people trained on it. We're going to talk about that later on, because copyright infringement is going to get fixed in this country by, guess what? AI and blockchain. That's correct. And so, but here's the trends of power consumption. Next, please. There's the power consumption one. And again, we are going up and to the left, right? We are going into the stratosphere of the amount of power. And this country is not producing enough power from an electric grid standpoint. Next, please. So why is the edge going to be the next gold rush? So just let's take a look at it. That's a centralized large language model, extremely high GPU usage. Ignore the TPU. We're going to talk about that in a second. Latency is super high. 100 megawatt easily drawn for sites, hyperscale data centers, and expensive training clusters. And then if we get the inferencing, it's roughly the same, a little bit lower density, small language model, ultra fast. It needs ultra fast performance, but yes, the requirements for power are coming down. But this is what's going to happen of the proliferation of the next edge data center paradigm. Next, please. So I'm going to skip a second. I met Kathy Wood, the owner of ARK Investments. And I thought what was really interesting is, you know, these people, these private equity companies and venture capital firms that are tracking technology, they're using AI to figure out where the trends are. And I found this one fascinating because she took neural networking. Look at the important part of this. The thicker the band is, it's tying to outlying technologies. In other words, neural networking, AI, is going to enable the proliferation of just about every technology that mankind touches. And it is going to allow that to advance farther and faster than ever before. I would say the most amazing slide that she had to put up there is if we take a look from 1900 to today, the average worldwide GDP was a GDP increase of 3%. 3%. That sounds nominal. I could tell you, if we go back before 1900, we were sub 3%. In fact, we were sub 0.5%, right? So that's pretty fast, 3%. Guess what ARK is forecasting for the next 3 to 5 years? 10%. 10%. All right, let's put that in perspective. What is 10% GDP growth? Look, politics aside, we have a debt problem in this country. And if anybody watches Ray Dalio, you know that his changing world order says there's a whole bunch of things that when the world order changes. I think he's got one wrong: the impact of technology. The impact of technology is going to be so profound in this country that we will grow our way out of the debt cycle. I know that's controversial, but it's okay. These times are different. We are invented a technology that will far surpass humankind's abilities. Next, please. So, what are some of the things that the world is going to rock? I'm going to take you a little drift right down into my personal investment stack, right? We don't live in a world anymore where you invest in companies on the stock market alone, right? I spend a lot of time as a venture capitalist looking for who's going to change the world. This company is going to change the world. This is Xtropic. Xtropic makes the first room temperature silicon TPU, thermodynamic processing unit. Quick physics lesson. Every other chip, CPU, GPU, FPGA, is a deterministic chip, means it calculates by 1 and 0. Quantum chips live way down in here, completely non-deterministic, meaning it can hold a value in its qubit between 0 and 1 to a very, very high accurate, 0.0125234567 But to do that, I need to freeze it. I need to freeze time. And that takes a tremendous amount of energy. And because of that, the founder, Dr. Verdon, he was running Google Quantum Labs and decided it was going to take too long for the science to be able to make this useful. So he realized by laws of thermodynamics, probabilistic, meaning I could hold a p-bit, probabilistic bit, into a fraction between 0 and 1 at room temperature. I invested. I thought it would take 5 years to do it. It took less than 1 because of AI. Using AI, we're able to actually search metallurgy, come up with things to be able, because what we're doing is changing the silicon die's characteristics of performance, but when you inject a signal, it will hold the bit to wherever you want. He delivered in silicon a chip, a dev kit that will ship in the summer of 25 and commercial chips by 2026 with Taiwan Semiconductor. And I'll cut to the chase. It is 10,000 times more energy efficient than a GPU. Tell me that is not going to change the world. This is not going to be available in 5 years. This is going to be available next year. So when I tell you in a few minutes that robotics are going to be 1 million robots this year and probably 1 billion robots in 2030 and 10 billion robots in 2035, guess what the underlying technology is going to be? This chipset, because it's going to be the fastest, lowest power producing chipset in the world. Next, please. This is liquid AI. If we're talking hardware, let's talk now about foundational models by which we calculate training. Right now, neural networking, Kathy Wood's deck, talking interconnection of neural networks. The basic of neural networking is that you need 192 nodes in order to do your calculations of answering. These guys have the patent on doing it in, drumroll, 19 steps. What does that mean? 19 steps means that you are going to be able to take your cell phone in just another year, and that cell phone, which we call a smartphone, isn't really smart. It just does things that you've pre-recorded into it and done. Your cell phone is about to become a smart device. And what I mean by that is you're going to run in a very short time a large language model on your phone. It will predict your next move before you know what you're going to do. We're moving into strange times. Next, please. Lemurian Labs. So you're going to have a multitude of chips out there. And I would argue, sorry, NVIDIA, I think AMD actually makes a better chipset. But I think it actually doesn't have the proliferation of software. And they know that. But NVIDIA does. And that's why NVIDIA is the darling of Wall Street and the darling of all large language models. But there's a number of people who do it, but everybody has their own software set. Lemurian is actually building one common operating system a full stack operating system that all chips will work on. GPUs, CPUs, CPUs, you name it. And it all work on one set, and you won't have to change, and you can intermix the hardware type. Because I would argue that the TPUs that I just talked about a few minutes ago aren't going to come out in a straight TPU set to start off with. It's probably going to mix with TPUs and GPUs on the same card, since some things it does well, right? Monte Carlo simulations, TPUs do it far better, and so you'll have a combination of those chipsets on the card. Next, please. So what does it mean? What does it mean, all of this stuff? So here's my predictions. Agentic AI. I would argue by the end of 26, everything that you could do in front of your computer, write a book, write a letter, create art, create music, schedule a trip. Anything you want to do, AI will not just do it, it will do it better. And right now, if you want to book a trip, by the end of the year, you'll say do it, and it will book all the travel arrangements, make all the visas, do all of the things that you need to do. That's how fast we're moving. We just talked about that TPUs are going to become. By 2027, we're going to see a narrow AI explosion. This is where dystopia begins, because governments are not going to be able to catch up to the displacement in the workforce. The first displacement is going to be easy. I would argue that we already have a massively low unemployment. I would actually argue we don't have enough people to do what we do now. So the first run is just going to be filling in all the people that were short in the workforce for things like construction, things like nursing, things like the most dangerous jobs in the world. Those are going to be the easy ones. But what do we do when you're a truck driver? And all you ever know is a truck driver. And there is no more jobs for truck drivers because an AI is driving that truck far faster. Now fill in every other thing. Lift operator, crane operator, airplane operator, you name it, the computer's going to do it not a little bit better, but about 10,000 times better than you could ever possibly function. Why? You drive distracted, you drive drunk, you drive tired, you drive angry, you drive this, you're distracted by every shiny objects. The computer's not. It's going to treat your grandmother better than your grandmother's ever been treated by a human being, and she's going to love that robot as much as you because she has needs, and those needs are not being fed. Want to prove it? Go look at AI. Go look at Figure AI's pitch deck. He's raising $1.5 billion against a $38 billion valuation. Here's his pitch, problem statement. World GDP is $42 trillion a year is based on human labor. 59% of worldwide GDP is based on human labor. There's 3.3 billion homes in the world. And 700 million elder people will need in-home care by the end of 26, and there are not nurses to do it until robots come along. And when robots come along and they are infinitely compassionate and infinitely skilled to listen to that person ask for things over and over and have nothing but compassion in their circuits, people are going to gravitate towards that. And that is going to be the beginning of the great acceptance of robots in the world. Human level intelligence, I think, will be achieved as early as 2030. Grok 3 being built by Tesla, right? Elon Musk right now, he's saying it will have an IQ of 1,500. Put it in perspective. Smartest people on the planet have an IQ of 180. About 180 is the top one ever recorded. He's saying 1,500. What the hell does that even mean? We have no possible way to know what actually it's going to mean. Here's what I think it means. It answers all of the secrets of the universe that our feeble minds were never able to conceive, and then it will dumb it down for us to understand. That's how profound this technology is going to change the world. Inferencing in data centers will flourish. By 2030, Gen 3 plus nuclear reactors will become commercially viable. I said Gen 4 is by 2035. I didn't actually put it on there. Yep, I did. Actually, it will be by 2035. I think Gen 3 plus. What is a Gen 3 plus? This is a light water reactor that is in a nuclear aircraft carrier. We just need to make it safer. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I would argue, is going to approve this because the technology is proven, and all that they're proving is the safety protocols. If you have a problem, will it fail hot or cold? We will learn how to do better safety protocols, and I'd say nuclear starts introduced by 2030. And like I said, there'll be 1 million active robots by, I'm sorry, that should be 1 billion. I got to change that. That's got to be 1 billion. And then by 2033, TPUs will dominate. The social state expansion begins. What do I mean by that? As people leave the workforce, right? We are going to have a large social state. I believe, to be just frank, unfortunately, the division between the haves and the have-nots is about to get a lot worse before it gets better. However, by 2035 is when we've achieved superhuman intelligence. By 2035 is when Gen 4 nuclear reactors come online and power becomes virtually free. By 2035, there'll be 1 billion active robots. Right there's the million, there's the billion. 1 billion active robots. And by 2035 is where I believe post-scarcity, post-biological paradigm begins. I'm going to let that settle in a minute, because here's what I'm talking about. Go back to Star Trek. In Star Trek, when you sat on the bridge, did anybody ever talk about money? No. You know why? In that world, in that universe, money doesn't exist. Because if you were hungry, what did you do? You asked the computer to feed you, or to give you a space, or to give you something, and it just produced it for you, free. That's the world that AI will run. And you might think I'm crazy, but when we're sitting here 10 years from today, let's see how crazy I am. Because I'm going to venture to say that we're going to live in a post-scarcity society where we as human beings lack for nothing. And I want to be around for that to happen. Next, please. All right, so we're getting pretty, what does it mean? Act 3, the solution for now. ThermaGRID, right? It is the AI-protected edge data center infrastructure that I've come up with. And yes, it's intellectually protected by my company, IP. And that's it right there. It's electric grid independent. It can be generatorless. It's virtually water-free, and it's resilient, and it's ESG ready. Next, please. All right. Why? What was the concept? First thing I did was look at Lazard's energy list, which we've all looked at before if you're an engineer. And this is tracking which is the cheapest ways in the world in which to produce power. Gas combined cycle, which was traditionally held for utilities. And utilities, however, today, I'd argue that we could actually get that down into small parasitic loads. Parasitic loads, meaning produce enough power at my building site such that I do not export power off the site, therefore I don't look like a utility, but I want to produce it in the most effective, cheapest way. Next, please. Here's what it looks like in a cost sensitive of capital. Today, capital cost is high, and it changed the number a little bit. We see solar utility goes from way up here cost-wise to drops way down here in cost of capital. And we see, but gas combined cycle, they're right here. All of my latest big projects, gas combined cycle and solar. All right, you want to build power and mass scale, that's the two technologies you're going to look at. Next, please. So what's it look like for me? The vision was a data center that's sustainable and resilient, a data center that eliminates water usage, can unlock savings through energy efficiency. It's ESG compliant. That was my vision for it. The problem was that data centers right now use massive amounts of water and electricity, right? The mechanical chillers and wet towers are inefficient and they're unsustainable in the technologies. Grid dependency creates risks and cost volatility, and ESG pressures on AI workloads demand. AI workloads. Few people realize that if you were to build a large language model today of GPUs, that when you build it, the consumption of that GPU is somewhere between 125% and 30%. So, and it changes in milliseconds. And anybody, all the electrical engineers out there in the world know you can't build a control scheme that changes in milliseconds. So you have to size that facility for the 125%. Except the utilization rate of the power, if you take a look at a baseline, could be 30 or 40%, as well as the GPUs. That's a huge waste of both energy, infrastructure, GPUs, everything across the stack. So our solution, just hold that in your thought. Our solution is a combined cycle power plant with dry cooler condensing to a steam dry cooled condenser to eliminate water use, underground thermal storage to store cold water, and it uses both free cooling and adiabatic pre-cooling integration. Next, please. Here's a picture of what it looks like. So here on the left, we see 3 to 20 megawatt combined cycle power plant, which is a combination of a gas turbine, a HRSG and boiler, and a steam turbine. The gas turbine is producing most of the electricity off of a natural gas or any hydrocarbon or eventually hydrogen, and it's producing electricity. About 20 to 30% is given off the steam turbine. It adds to the grid. The steam is then going into a large fan dry-cooled steam condenser, which has pre-cooling to drop it lower, and then takes and reuses the condensate coming off the facility and then dumps all that cold water back into the ground. Well, nature's most effective way to store chilled water and turn warm water into cold water. And then we're going to pump that chilled water with free cooling seasonally into the facility for usage. And if we need backup of mechanical chiller, depending on region, we can put that. But I even have other technologies that if we're at a hillside, that we could do pumped hydro. Next, please. Here's going to be an individual. So here's the system overview. 3 to 20 megawatts, generates electricity. It basically uses a Brayton cycle to burn natural gas to produce the electricity. It uses heat recovery steam generator. That's what a HRSG is, to capture the exhaust. And then we use a Rankine cycle to convert steam into additional electricity. But remember, this is an efficiency stack, right? So we're less efficient here. So we downplay the amount of energy. But look at the efficiency I'm getting, 55 to 62%, which is significantly higher than a fossil fuel plant. But now I've got it down to a 3 to 20 megawatt site. Next, please. Here's what the dry cooler looks like. Because people say, what do you mean large fan? You know what I want to get rid of? I want to get rid of using all of the big A-frame V things that are a maintenance nightmare. I'm sorry, all the guys that are producing them at this show, right? It's a maintenance nightmare, right? Because this is what, here, each one of those fans can cool 9 megawatts of power, right? And they're going to be today, there's lots of manufacturers that are doing this, but it's going to replace the traditional water-intensive wet cooling. It uses the ambient air to cool and condense the steam back into water, and then I'm going to push it. Uses zero water. It's a closed-loop system. It's slightly less efficient in hot climates, but it's sustainable and is regulator-friendly to get it permitted. Next, please. Then we're going to take that and we're going to dump that down into a UTES, an underground thermal energy storage system to store the cold water. And it's basically, there's lots of different ways to do it. I'm really adept at being able to, or we're building adeptness in doing borehole technology. And so we'll take the boreholes, thousands of them, underneath everything. We won't put them under the building, but it'll be under everything. It'll be under the equipment yard, under the parking lot, on the ancillary side. There needs to be hundreds of these holes in order to push all this water down there. You store the water during low demand or lower temperatures, the nighttime, and you discharge it when you're into peak heat and or cooling for the data center. Its benefits are that its load shifts. The load shifting reduces the strain on your cooling system. It enables off-peak energy use to create the cold water, improving your grid economics, and it provides resiliency and redundancy. Next, please. So some of the things that you could add to it: free cooling utilizing ambient air, best used when the temperatures outside are correct, and adiabatic cooling, pre-cooling the steam before it goes into the large fan, the big ass fan, and then some additional things you could do. You could do AI-driven optimization and controls. I could use the waste heat if I wanted to do district heating, right? Not appropriate for data centers, but if you were doing a greenhouse, for instance, next to it, you could pull off that heat and do it for a greenhouse. Integration with renewables. I can add anything I want to my stack, including, by the way, the electric utility if I wanted to make it resilient, but I could tie in solar or any other hybrid technology that I want to do in an architecture. And it's fuel flexible, which means that, yes, I'm using a hydrocarbon in the form of natural gas because it's prevalent, but I would say that in the next few years, we're going to see either pumped ammonia or actually pumped hydrogen, both hydrogen-derived sources, and so we'll be able to use that easily. Next, please. And so what are the benefits to it? Energy efficiency, water sustainability, carbon reduction, thermal and optional resilience, and it's future-proofed. And these are all the benefits it brings. Next, please. And then to the use cases, I think the hyperscalers will be able to do this and do high PUE dew reduction goals by leveraging this into existing facilities. It will easily produce I put 30 to 80, but I really don't see a conceivable limit as to what I could actually do to direct-to-chip cooling. But most right now, I've seen Dell shipping 200 megawatt racks, and I got kind of, I've heard words from Paul Perez, one of the fellows at Dell, that they've got designs of 500 kilowatts a rack. That's a lot. And so remote or resilient edge facilities where grid power is reliable and it's great for water-constrained locations. Its financial models, I could tell you, it actually competes head-to-head with every other way that I could do it dollar for dollar, except it's easier to maintain, which makes its ROI faster. And it qualifies for lots of sustainability programs. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And deployment models, I could do it as a greenfield, I could do it as a brownfield, I could combine it in a microgrid, and I could do it as a joint venture or some financial-friendly arrangement. Next, please. Other way. There you go. So I'm not just talking about it, I'm building it. Why? Because I brought this technology last year to a lot of you. And you know what? Nobody wants to be the first to use anything. So I got together with my investors and we said, F it. We're going to be the first ones to use it. Actually, that's actually not true. There's actually a bunch of people already looking to do it. I can't talk about it, but there's a large AI producer in New Jersey that's going to be building a 35 megawatt solution purely on gas, no electricity, no backup generators, 100% built on 5 nines of resiliency on just linear generator technology, just like I told you last year. I said so, but we're already in development. Next, please. This is Bristol, Connecticut. So Bristol, Connecticut is going to be a 3 megawatt facility. I could do 200 kilowatt combined rack of direct-to-chip cooling and air cooled. It'll be available in the third quarter of 2026. And you can see here we are using linear generators, even though I just talked about the ThermaGRID. We are looking at see how it adapts to this space, but the ThermaGRID is going to enable me to get 30 cents on the dollar CAT tax credit from the state of Connecticut. Next, please. Here's its companion. This is Colchester. Both of these, by the way, are suburbs of Hartford, Connecticut, home to ESPN, home to Yale University Medical Center, actually Greenwich, Connecticut, and all the financial services firms. We are not lacking for people who are looking for space right now. We have 2 parcels. Parcel number 1, we're building a 3.5 megawatt IT data, AI HPC data center on it. Again, 200 kilowatt rack. It's going to be available at the same time. We have power permits already for the land. We're getting funding right now. And parcel number 2, we have 18 megawatts available that we're going to build and operate the power pad adjacent to it. It's this piece right there. And that power pad will also be available in that same time frame. Next, please. All right, so what's the opportunities? Let's co-develop a Gray Wolf data center site together, right? If you want to be a part of this, I can tell you there's a whole lot more going on here. I own a Web 3.0 company called Humble. that we built the world's first tokenization of real world assets. I'm actually raising capital for an array of data centers in a DAO, a distributed autonomous organization. And anybody with land or capital or wants to be a part of operating data centers, we could be part of the DAO, and we could raise capital by selling tokenization on the capital, through tokenization of the real world assets to every investor. And that's in the works. We can retrofit any of your existing sites using the ThermaGRID approach. It does not take more room than the traditional approaches. It's just the equipment is now being built in smaller scale. We can deploy edge infrastructure where you need it most. So I'm doing lots of deployments by working with the co-location operator and putting their client who wants direct-to-chip cooling, and I'm converting 20-year-old chilled water plants and understand the needs of the on-stack chipset. And a company like ours is able to make the connections between what is the need of thermodynamics to the rack and what is the need from the facility. And I could tell you that all of the IT OEMs are buying components of the cooling system and OEMing it without really fully understanding it. I'm sorry, I insulted a whole bunch of people here today, but they just don't understand it. It requires engineering knowledge to understand the thermodynamics of routing water through the CDU to the rack and then all the way through producing that through the facility. And you need somebody like me. So for Princeton University and CyrusOne, they hired me on one side to actually solve it up it from the CDU to the rack, and then CyrusOne hired me to solve it from the CDU back to the chiller. Right? And so that's what it takes. And then so find me, schedule a one-on-one with me, and let's explore your roadmap. Next, please. So I want to finish with this, and it's a shameless plug for the book that I just wrote, Living in Bliss. It'll be available May 15th, but why? Because I just spent the last 25 minutes talking about how AI is going to change the world. And I had to think about that because I got the 3 young girls. And I had to think about what does it mean for humanity and what does it mean for me? And here's what it means for me. The search to peace and bliss is an inward search. And when man has nothing left to do, when we no longer identify ourselves with what we do and what we own and where we work and what we do for a living, and when AI does everything we do better, what do we do? And the answer is we better find peace within. By the way, the ancient mystics knew that. We're going to live in a world, I'm happy to say, that technology is going to prove all those ancient mystics correct. That there is truly a oneness and everything is going to be okay. And that's why I predicted from dystopia to utopia, because mankind is about to change. We are no longer living in a world we're going to get eaten by dinosaurs. And in the next millennia, we're going to learn how to be altruistic and how to learn how to be selfless. And this is my path. This is a very introspective journey of my journey to realize that I'm going to live the rest of my day, not for me, but I'm going to live the rest of my days for my children, my family, for all of you, and give back to the world. Next, please. But while I give back to the world, I'm going to protect myself. So you may have been intrigued by these slides. You might have been taking pictures without my knowledge, but I want you to know that everything that you just saw is actually protected. Intellectually protected. I know that because I'm one of the founders of Instant IP, and we are changing the way intellectual property is managed in this country by protecting it on a blockchain using smart contracts. And I'm working with Bill Gross so that we're going to change the way search is being done from being on search engines to actually chat GPTs or GPTs in general and large language models, and that people who are writing the content of the world are going to be rewarded for writing the content of the world. If you're the guy with the stupid cat video that gets 10 million, say goodbye to Google. That's going to be on your private chat, and you're going to decide what revenue that you're going to generate from it. That's the world we're going to live in. So thank you very much. Here's the next is all the things I'm involved in. You can connect with my card. These are all my entities, or at least some of them that I'm involved in. Here's all my contact. Dude, you just have to put Pete Sacco out in the world, and you're going to come up with something about me. My marketing department makes sure of it. And that's it. I want to thank everybody for your time. I appreciate it.